When you're studying for the PE exam, there's no reason for you to reinvent the wheel. In this week's Pass the PE exam video, I have with me Anton Saunders. Anton is a structural engineer with Greenman Peterson Inc., and he recently achieved his PE license. He's going to talk to us about kind of the three-phase process that he used to prepare for the exam. And the phase one of this three-phase is something that a lot of people overlook. And he's also going to talk about calming nerves on exam day. This video is brought to you by our sponsor, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for both the FE and PE exams since 1975. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the PE exam the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. When you take a live online course, PPI guarantees you will pass, or you can take the on-demand course for free. With study guides, practice exams, and more, the PPI Learning Hub offers digital practice and review that you can take with you anywhere you have a device so that you can prepare during the times most convenient for you. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for PE exam prep. Let's dive in. All right, so Anton, welcome to Pass the PE exam. Thanks for spending some time with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so Anton, to get us rolling here, tell our viewers what you do on a daily basis. What's your job at GPI?
So I'm a structural engineer. My job consists mainly of designing and analyzing transportation structures, that being highway bridges, mast arms, strain poles, sign structures, and any other miscellaneous transportation structures.
Okay, awesome. And first of all, congratulations on passing the PE. I think it's a huge achievement. It's a bear of an exam, but you did it, which is good news. And we're happy that you're here to share some of what you learned going through the process with our viewers. And as we get into that, talk a little bit about, I know you're in Florida, and Florida is one of those states where you can take the exam before you have all the experience needed to actually get the license. But talk about the process of, going to apply for the exam, and really like how having a master's in civil engineering kind of helped with that as well.
Yeah, so being in Florida, I'm able to take the exam about a year after I get some work experience behind me. So I originally took the exam in 2021, and somehow I passed. And so having a master's, it actually takes away 12 months of experience that you actually need to acquire your PE. So originally it's 4 years, but with a master's degree, you could actually get your PE in 3 years.
So you had a year of experience, you had a master's degree, took the exam in 2021. So that means you're right about the time where you can actually get the license now, correct?
Yep. I actually just got the license on March 10th.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. All right. That's awesome. And for those of you listening, this is called decoupling the exam. A lot of states, well, not a lot of states, but a number of states have decoupled the exam from the experience. And what I mean by that is, in some states, you need to take your FE exam and then get the proper number of years working experience. Like for me in New York, it was 4 before I could actually sit for and take the PE exam. But now in some states, Florida being one of them, I believe Texas is another one as well. And there's a list of them that you can find online. Basically, you can take your FE exam, and then after that, if you pass, you can take your PE exam at any time, even well before you've achieved the experience you need. However, you do not get your license until you then actually achieve the experience requirements. So, they're just allowing you to change the order a little bit, which can be beneficial just because, when we're younger, we tend to be fresher with some of the concepts on some of these exams because we're closer to our schooling. I don't know if you found that to be the case for you, Anton.
I agree totally. I was probably a year out of school at the time when I took the exam, so I was still in study mode really from taking tests in school, and it was, I guess, easier to retain that knowledge as I was studying.
Now, Anton took the exam while it was in the last pencil and paper version of the exam. So it wasn't the CBT what you have now, but there's still quite a few lessons that he learned that I think will be very applicable to you in preparing. And we're going to pick his brain on that a little bit. So Anton took the civil structural PE exam. And Anton, I guess the first question I'll ask you is, what was the experience like? Were there any challenges that you faced maybe during the exam that weren't expected? Just take us through the experience a little bit.
So being the pencil and paper exam, I was able to bring in all of my references. So I had a suitcase full of references, probably about 10 or 12 textbooks that I was lugging around to the test site. Getting to the test site, you sit down and your nerves are all over the place because you realize you're going to be in this exam for the next 8 hours. It was definitely one of the most challenging exams I've ever sat. The first 40 questions, that first 4 hour period, was pretty straightforward. That's the more general section of the exam where you're studying, where you're practicing all the disciplines. But the second portion of the exam was all structural engineering questions, and that by far was very challenging. I don't believe any amount of studying, any more studying I would have done could have fully prepared me for the exam, for those questions. But at the end of the day, somehow I made it through.
You made it through, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something that you mentioned there is really important and really applicable, I think, to the listeners today is that I also took the exam when it was pencil and paper a long time ago. And I found the same as you, that the number of books that you bring can in a way be a disadvantage because it's just kind of more things to carry, more things to be aware of, more things to prepare on. And my philosophy going in was I bought one of the reference manuals and I kind of studied with it all the time and I marked it up and I tabbed and I kind of used it as like the one that I kept on my desk and I used it for like 90% of the exam. So I do feel that there's an advantage with the CBT in that you have the one reference manual from NCEES, which is the only thing you're allowed to use, which in a sense kind of streamlines your studying habits a bit. I don't know if you would agree with that. I know you took the old one, but I feel like that could be one thing that's more of an advantage.
I don't really know for sure. I really like having books on me. I was able to tab everything as I went along. But I do agree that having one reference manual could be beneficial. I don't know how you would work now. Is it a thing where they would usually control find their PDFs to find everything they need? Well, yeah, if that's the case, then I believe once you study along with that reference manual and you know what is in that reference manual, it could be a big help, probably way more beneficial actually than actually with tabbing all of these textbooks.
Exactly. And that's why if you're out there studying now for the CBT exam, and we have a lot of practice problem videos on our channel. And what we try to do in those videos is when you see a problem, understanding the equations that you're going to need for that exam, because then you can type in the equation in the find in the PDF and jump to that.
Yeah. It's probably a big help actually.
Yeah, it can really cut down on time, which is a positive thing. So let's talk about time. I think one of the most important things on any test, whether it's CBT, pencil, paper, is time management. So talk to us a little bit about how you approached your study habits with your time management, your scheduling, etc.
So obviously at the time I was working full time as an engineering intern. So and at the time I actually lived an hour away from my office. So I would get home around 6 or 6:30, and my plan was always to study for 2 hours a night. Then after that, get some dinner and go to sleep and then do it all over again. What kept me on track was that I always kept reminders on my phone, reminders and alarms basically saying, "Hey Anton, it's time to study," or "Hey Anton, you're good now. You could relax." So that was a big help to me at the end of the day.
Did you find that having consistent study times each day was helpful to make sure you built that habit up?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, after the first 2 weeks were a little challenging getting into the whole swing of it, but after that, it just became my regular day-to-day for probably about 4 to 5 months.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I would say is the most important thing for studying is your study schedule and your study habits. I also took the exam when I had a full-time job, which most people do because you're working
Mm-hmm.
as an engineer and take the exam. And I remember that really the only effective way for me to do it, just with my working situation and family situation at the time, was to get up very early in the morning before work
Mm-hmm.
and block out, like an hour to work at that time. And so that's what I did. And it worked really well for me, but I put it on my calendar. I did it every day and it just became normal for me for those 6 months that I was studying. And so what I would recommend to you is pick the times of day that are going to work best for you and stick with that on a day-to-day basis. Put it on your calendar. I mean, we put everything on our calendar, our project meetings or
Mm-hmm.
all these other meetings. Put the study time on your calendar and stick to it. And especially it's important to be on your calendar if it can't be the same time every day. Some people have different schedules and they can't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily do that. So make sure that you try to do that. So Anton, talk about practice problems. How did they contribute to your preparation for the PE exam and helping you understand the material?
Practice problems were a huge part of my studying. For the first probably month and a half was primarily theoretical. I did a bunch of theory, but the majority of the time I spent studying was on the practice problems. The main reasons because I felt that I could grasp the concepts better, the theoretical concepts better, once I actually applied them with practice problems. Um, yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I
Mm-hmm.
took the same approach. I went to my reference manual. I read the chapter first. I understood
Mm-hmm.
the theory behind it. Then I would do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 problems
Mm-hmm.
on that subject to drive the theoretical, the theory home.
Exactly.
And that's an important part of what we're trying to accomplish. And really, the other thing that I'll say about that for everybody is when you're doing practice problems, we all know that they're important in preparation. You have to do practice problems in the situation that you're going to be in the exam. So what I mean by that is only have the material you can have for the exam. You know,
Mm-hmm.
obviously in the beginning you might do a lot of practice problems, but as you get closer, time yourself, put yourself in a room just like you're in the exam room. You have to replicate the situation because a lot of times people can answer problems one way when they have plenty of time and there's no
Mm-hmm.
stress and no pressure, right? But when
Yep.
you get into the exam, it completely changes. Did you find that to be the case, Anton?
I agree totally. There was actually, I think it was 2 weeks before my actual exam, I simulated an actual test scenario where I kind of locked myself in a room for 8 hours. All I had was my textbooks, the NCES practice exam, and my pencil and calculator, and I just went through all the problems for those 8 hours.
That's
And I felt
awesome.
that actually gave me a lot of confidence going into the exam.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what the exam is, and you're replicating, and it puts you in when you get into the exam, it feels
Hmm.
a little bit more comfortable because you've already been in that situation before and you went through that in the past. And so, are there any like specific strategies that maybe stood out for you that you use that you can share? I know it's maybe a little different with the CBT, but anything that you feel you could share that would be beneficial?
Strategies wise, um, definitely make your study guide. Start studying early. Um, what I did was probably that first month in my studies, I went around and talked to a bunch of my peers who had taken the PE exam, listened to a lot of podcasts and YouTube videos such as this, just to kind of wrap my head around what I'm actually getting myself into. Um, but I felt like the study guide was the most important thing. Setting yourself up with a schedule of what I need to accomplish this week, what I need to accomplish this month, so that I could actually meet this goal at the end of the day.
All right, I like that a lot. So basically what you see there is it's kind of like a three-phase process. The
Hmm.
first phase was Anton just learning about the exam, watching videos, listening to people, talking to other PEs. That's a great
Hmm.
strategy,
Hmm.
getting their tips. Then you go into the second phase where you're really creating your study schedule and diving into the studying, using the right books and manuals. And then I would say that phase three is kind of starting to do some of the problems in the test mode, like we talked about earlier, timing
Hmm.
yourself, putting yourself X amount of hours right at the table with the timer, et cetera, to kind of prep you. So think about it in different phases. But I think that first phase is important. And a lot of people skip over that and learning
Hmm.
about the exam, talking to other people, getting tips, getting strategies. And I guess one last thing that I'd ask you about, Anton, is, the exam day comes. Talk a little bit about self-care and prepping yourself kind of the day before the exam to make sure you're 100% ready.
So the day before, I I didn't study at all. I just um I kept it as a mental health day really. I just really watched Netflix and just kind of decompressed because I knew I was going to be in a high pressure situation the next day. Um, I actually lived an hour away from the site. So what I did was I rented a hotel room about 5 minutes away from the site because I didn't want the stress of being in traffic or um, anything going wrong on my journey to the actual site. Um, Woke up that next morning pretty early, probably about 2 hours before the exam, took a nice shower, ate a good breakfast so I'd be energized for the full day, and then I got it cracking.
Awesome. So it's exam day now. You're in the exam. A lot of engineers that go into this exam are very nervous. It's a monumental day for them in their careers. They're up against one of the biggest challenges they'll face. How do you handle, or how did you handle nerves in that situation?
Okay, so I would say this is a two-part answer. So it started before I actually went to the exam with that whole simulated test. That actually gave me the confidence I needed when I got into the test. Um, but second, in the test, I remember actually looking at that first problem and skipping it over because I had no idea what I needed to do for that problem. So I would say a strategy is definitely skipping if you need to, and just gaining that confidence as you start to answer um, questions correctly. I ended up going back to that first question, realizing it was nothing at all. It was pretty straightforward. I was just overthinking it in my head.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think there's a lot to the idea of building confidence and being confident in the exam, because
Hmm.
when you take an exam that's 8 hours with this kind of content on it, your mindset and your confidence is absolutely critical to the results.
Hmm. I agree.
All right, Anton, the last one I have for you. Any final piece of advice for listeners that are going to be taking the PE exam here in the near future?
I can't stress enough, make a study guide. Um, Start studying early so that you're able to effectively manage your time. Because I know you're probably going to be working full time as well. If you live far from the site, consider renting a hotel room close to the test site so that you're able to be in a very less stressful situation getting to the site. And at the end of the day, believe in yourself because I'm sure you could do it.
All right, Anton Saunders, structural engineer, Greenman Peterson Inc. Thank you so much for sharing some tips here on Pass the PE exam. We really appreciate the time, Anton.
Thank you for having me, Anthony.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Anton. I really liked the tips that he gave, especially around wrapping your head around the exam early on in the process. Talk to other PEs that went through the process. What tips do they have, right? And the idea of locking down your study schedule is critically important. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers pass the PE exam. Please leave questions or comments below and I will read them and answer them in an upcoming video. I'll see you next week.